Hi all, welcome to Substrate Saturday. It was glad to have all of you again. We have 26 participants this time. Please feel free to come on video. Also, we'd like to welcome everyone again for making it yes, thanks Julian. Hey Keshav, thanks again. Everybody who joined us for the Q&A yesterday, thanks again. And we have Tejas and Loki as our presenters today. 1 second. Yeah. So as always, we welcome you to Substrate Saturday, the bootcamp hosted by Polkadot India and the team. You can keep interacting with the mentors and can keep the chat open for all of you all. If you haven't joined our Telegram and our Discord group, we'll be sharing the links soon. And we can get started. If you have any questions before we start for Tejas, we can start right away. You can unmute yourself and ask Tejas and Loki any questions you might have, or you can drop them in the chat box. As always, have a good session, people. Let's get started. Over to you, Tejas.
Thanks, Asif. So firstly, I would like to thank all of you for joining. And also I would like to ask, how was the assignment from last time's session? You guys can unmute yourself and tell us, or you can post it in chat. The Dropbox clone project. There can be two reasons for this for this silence. One is that many people didn't try. Second thing, it was difficult.
Yeah. The assignment was kind of. To be honest, I just tried to look around for like similar. I tried to Google for like similar solutions to see how to implement it. I haven't really attempted it per se, but I have like been trying to look for, okay, how they implement. I think I saw one, but it was with JavaScript, I think. So I was trying to see, okay, because to be honest, it's only Rust I know how to write. So I was like, okay, how am I going to start learning JavaScript to try and be able to understand how this guy did his own, then to try and implement it in Rust. So I haven't really attempted it yet from my side.
Got it. But did you have an understanding of how you have to go about the project, or how to at least or where do you have to start? Like, did you get a brief idea of that?
Well, I think I tried to understand first of all, like what it is, like what the Dropbox, what is it first, like the functionality of Dropbox itself. So it seems that where is a place where you could like store files and try to receive it. So I think I just tried to have a fair understanding. Okay, using like blockchain technology, then trying to, okay, instead of storing this on the, I think they store theirs on the cloud, now you store it on IPFS. So I was just basically high level. I didn't really understand it, to be honest, like very well. So yeah.
Got it. I think IPFS was the second part of the assignment. IPFS wasn't compulsory, but mostly it was constructing your own palettes, and saving the data on IPFS was a bonus actually. You can look into that later maybe, but mostly focus on the functionalities or the extrinsics that you will be creating when you're attempting. It's if you've done kitties, then it should be like easier to approach the problem.
So, Julian, have you done kitties? Like, I mean, not just Julian, everybody else. Have you guys been able to complete kitties at least?
Well, for me, I also faced some problems with kitties. I think it was the dependencies that was the issue. So I was trying to go over a tutorial to see how the person implemented that, because I was having issues with the dependencies, with what the tutorial said. They were using them in the cargo.tom of the SPIO. So I was when I used the SPIO dependency, it brings up an error that failed to load cargo manifest. Then when I remove that dependency, it brings up another error saying there are some what was the specific? I think I can't remember it off the top of my head. I stored it somewhere.
But I think I understand no problem. So
Okay, yeah.
yesterday, even in the Q&A, many of them were mentioning the same issue, and I believe it's because kitties is like kind of outdated at the moment. But then I still, it's a very good learning tutorial. So for those of you like see, this is a small trick around. So I'm going to share two links. One link is for the uh, you see one link is for a template for for the template that I used for kitties when I did it, and also the completed solution for kitties that I have done, right? So if you use the same version and you follow the same tutorial, the same template, you should be able to build kitties successfully, and it will work fine. Okay. And I, because I know that because I have implemented the same thing on the same template that I'm sharing with you, and uh, it will work. So you can either just use the template or copy the kitties folder that I have shared in the second link and just redo the same thing again as I mean as a practice. I would believe like I would suggest all of you to do this if you're running into dependency issues, because dependency issues are because of Polkadot versions being upgraded. And this kitties tutorial is about 7 months old or so, and which is why a lot of dependency issues are popping up. So yeah, to do kitties, please use this. So just use this kitties folder, and once you have this kitties folder, you can compile it and it will run and all that. So as practice, what you guys will do is just create another folder inside palette, and then just write your same kitties functionality and explanation for that. You try to figure it out from the tutorial link that is there. Because if you are able to do that much and you're able to compile kitties successfully, then the Dropbox clone project is like 95% related to the implementation is related to kitties. Like you have all your answers inside the kitties project itself. There is nothing you have to do external except for version 2. So that is the major thing that you guys can do. So yeah, so I'll just explain once more. Let me just give you again what I told you. So just come to this repo. I'm under Kitty. So if you come to this repo, you can download the code or you can download it as a zip. Once you download it as a zip, just go into the kitties folder. So only the kitties folder. Once you're inside this kitties folder, make sure you're in this directory, and then you can do like cargo build and then the command to start. So the moment you start that, you should be able to get a working uh, node of the entire kitty, because the entire kitty thing is implemented here. Now you might ask, like, say, you won't learn from here, right? Because this is already implemented. So for that, I would suggest inside the same folder, inside palettes, just create another folder for all of you to practice. So it's all right, even if the kitty score is going to be in the same folder, but just create another palette and try to do that as a practice thing. So that will at least get your kitties covered and your dependencies and all that will be fine. The main reason all of you are finding dependency issues is because of the version, Polkadot version. It's very old. You can see it is on October of 2021, right? So it's an old build, so which is why you run into a lot of things. And also I want to share another thing. So software. So once you come to this repo here, also you can so yeah, so you see SL new kitty solution or solution kitties. This is an old one, this is a new one. So come here. So this is the main developer. Shasha is the main developer who developed the entire tutorial for kitties. So he's a co-developer from Parity team itself, right? So you can come here and look into palettes, and inside palettes you'll come into kitties, and you'll find the entire code here also. So implemented here completely, and you will also have tests for all your kitties that has been written. So this piece will be good. And if you see the version here also, say he is following like that time, that latest. So I would suggest you can follow this also. I'll just share this link as well. So cloning this repo, this code, and building it will also give you the same functionality of uh, compiling the code. So yeah, I'm sharing both the links. So you guys can come here and look for kitties, and you should be able to find it under branches in substrate.template itself. So this code will be directly from your the main developer who created the tutorial. So yeah, and this code has the test cases and everything. So when I did it in a different version. So which is why you have two different code bases. So any of you can choose to use any of these templates. So and it should be fine. The idea is just get the code to compile, and once the code is compiling, clear onto the functionalities, and then try to re-implement the same code line by line. It's all right to write same line, same code, but the most important part is to understand what you're doing. So that is where the tutorial explanation comes into picture, and that will always remain as a book that everybody can refer. So each line of code is explained there, and you guys can learn from it. So that's one way of getting over the kitties assignment. And yeah, if all of you succeed on Kitty's assignment, the Dropbox assignment is pretty straightforward. At least you can link all the functions that you need to do on Dropbox in Kitty's. So all your answers will be found here. So yeah. Anything else, guys?
For Harshit, I think has done the Dropbox project, I guess. Is it Harshit? It was good for him.
No, sir, I mean the assignment was good, but I'm actually way too busy actually at times with my college placements, and also I was partially able to attempt it, but was not fully able to complete it.
Got it. But do do attempt it. It's could be good practice for you.
Yeah, I'm working on, but due to my placement and college purpose, I'm got a busy last week.
Got it. Okay, first priority to that. James will also be like doing kitties by today, or be completing kitties by today, and then we'll move on to the Dropbox thing. Okay.
So others probably just finish the small portion that we planned for today, like just the code piece. Shall we just finish the piece now, and then again we can do a Q&A right at the end of the session?
Sure. So, okay. So for today, what we have planned is that we are going to create tokens using a palette called palette assets. We'll be showing that to you. And after that, we'll have a small quiz, which will be fun. And we'll be asking questions related to Rust, Substrate, and some concepts on blockchain. And we'll be just shooting questions, and you can ask. You can answer those questions. Like we are not expecting a perfect answer. You can answer at your at your best. So at your best knowledge. So we can start with the first piece, Lokesh.
Sure. And yeah.
And also one more thing, Julian, right? Okay, so Julian, I think starting with Rust will give you a good knowledge in programming. But Rust would be a bit difficult if you're starting programming. I think also pick up on some language like Python, I guess, so that you have an idea of, because Rust is a low level language. It's your choice. I mean, if you like do Rust for like 3 or 4 months, I guess you will have no issues with the,
Yeah, can I add something? Because I think like Julius, to be honest, it's only Rust. I started with Rust. So I think first started trying to understand what programming is. That was for me. Then like operating, like also like how the hardware and operating system and the kernel and everything tries to operate. Then from there, I just started to try to learn. And I wouldn't say I'm perfect yet, but to be honest, right, like I'm much better than I started with. So I think if you want to start with Rust, I think at least from my own experience, I can say it's possible, but very difficult.
Yes, it is possible, but it is difficult. But I think you will overcome the difficulties once you are accustomed to the errors that Rust throws. So once you are aware of all the intricacies of where you are stuck and how to resolve that, so it becomes easy. So no issues there since you have started with Rust. Cool. I think yeah, Lokesh, I think we can start.
And also, Keshav, your question for existential deposit, I don't exactly remember, but you can check out the documentation. There is a minimum deposit of around 10,000 units that one account should have to have an account on the Polkadot chain or Substrate chain. So yeah, there is some fees. I don't know the exact number, but you can always read it in the documentation. Cool. And yeah. And also something that Julian, if you have no background in programming at all, to be honest, starting out with Rust is going to be a hard task. The first thing that you'll have to focus on is understand programming concepts. How does a program work? Why, and what are the different execution pieces in a program? And start writing simple functions. So, like they just said, probably starting off with Python, I think, is the easiest choice. It's not messing up. It won't mess you up a lot, and it's much more easy when it comes to learning, and you have a lot of resources out there which is free that you can learn. And second, in terms of blockchain, though we are doing a Substrate workshop, starting out with Solidity would prove much easier when compared to starting out with Rust and Substrate, at least in terms of the learning curve. But if you're dedicated enough to start off with Rust and Substrate, yes, you can definitely do it, but with a lot of hard work. So,
yeah, can I also share? There's one link I saw on Twitter. I think it's sort of experimental, but they try to add quizzes to the end of the Rust programming language book, the Rust book. So I don't. Can I share it on the link?
yeah, please, yeah,
Sure,
please,
sure.
share.
So they have these quizzes where they try to test your understanding while going through the book. Yeah. So that's the link.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sure. Yeah, you can always use all these resources, and yeah. So yeah, but as a developer advice, I would always suggest anybody to pick up the easiest path. Don't go for things that are too complex, too hard for things to achieve. Set goals which are relatively easy to achieve in the next couple of weeks. Like 2 to 3 weeks is ideally a good time for anybody to pick up a language, pick up a concept, pick up and implement a project. A POC or a minimum viable product should be ready by 3 weeks. So 2 to 3 weeks is a good duration. So don't start out with something that is too hard and you get complicated and you're lost and you lose motivation eventually. So instead, pick out the stuff that are more easier to implement. Once you get the feel of coding, you'll be like, okay, fine, yeah, I can get this straightly. So yeah. Uh, so for now, I'll just start off with the curriculum today. So how many of you are aware of what is the concept of fungible tokens? Okay, please just say yes, no, whatever it is. Yeah. So can any of you name some of the fungible tokens as well? Yeah, USDC is a fungible token. Jibril, ERC20 is a contract standard for fungible tokens on Solidity, right? So yeah, so that's correct. And so all your Bitcoin, your ETH, your dots, your Definity coins, or any your Shiba Inu coins, or all these coins are all uh, uh, fungible tokens, right? And as a blockchain developer, it becomes like a very basic thing, like a curious question that anybody will be asked on. Okay, I'm doing blockchain, but how do I create my own cryptocurrency, right? Creating a cryptocurrency is not as hard as you guys think. It's very simple. So today we will cover how to create a small cryptocurrency on our own, which we call as a fungible token, on our own, on the Substrate blockchain, like on the Substrate framework on Polkadot. So just to get started, let me share my screen. So yeah, hopefully everybody is able to see my screen. So if you see, I have already just cloned the Substrate node template. Just to tell you what version I'm using the Polkadot 9.28, just to make sure that we are on the latest version, and I can get this to work here. And here, so I have already compiled the code, but I want to do it again. Now, how do I build my own fungible? I want to create my own cryptocurrency. Most of our projects will be requiring us to create our own cryptocurrency, and it eventually like having your own cryptocurrency in chain, like especially if you're building a metaverse, or you have an NFT marketplace where you're selling your art collection and stuff. Then you will need some kind of cryptocurrency to be on your own. You don't want to have transaction ETH or Bitcoin, which you can, but having your own token will increase the value of your own token, and probably the business value of it is that you earn more money, right? So that is what it is. So how do we do it on this one? So like I said, you come to develop Substrate or dev, come to marketplace, you have a whole list of palettes here. There are so many palettes that you can use. And so when I want to create something as a token, as a fungible token, Substrate provides something called as palette assets that I can use to create tokens. I'm just leaving this link here. So you can read about what palette assets does here. So today I'm mostly going to focus on how to just create the token and get little bit of hands-on on how your Substrate tokens work, right? So the first and foremost thing, whenever you come, like, so I use this palette assets, and all this assets already has all the functionalities that I want. But I want to create my own palette in a structure that I would look or perceive for my own blockchain, right? Even though this palette already has this thing, I'm going to do it, like customize it for my own functionality that I would require. So you see, it using palette assets, the main things, you can have asset issuance, you have asset transfer, you have asset destruction. You can use it for fungible assets and you can use it for non-fungible assets as well. Can any of you quickly come up and tell me one difference between, like, any differences that you know about from uh, fungible asset to a non-fungible asset? You guys can come up on audio and quickly tell us.
Yeah, I could probably jump in. Fungible assets or fungible tokens are something that can be interchanged, non-fungible, like how you have ERC 721. But yeah, non-fungible is like you can't exchange a house with a car. Fungible is like you can exchange a dollar with a dollar. But yeah, non-fungible are two totally different types of assets that you can't exchange for each other.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's also one. So any more?
I think a non-fungible asset would basically be an asset that the value is sort of subjective to the owner of whoever like owns the assets. We want to like decide, okay, what this asset is worthwhile. That's in terms of exchange. And while for fungible assets, a specific asset is the same value at whatever point in time. That means it can be exchanged, as the previous speaker said, a dollar for $1 is always has value of $1. $10 also has the same value of another $10. So it's all the same. While for
Okay,
like
your
non-fungible,
fungible asset not necessarily will always have the equivalent to a dollar. Those are called as altcoins. Altcoins are stable coins, where $1 will always, for an altcoin that is related to stable coin, like your dollar will always have the equivalent of a dollar price. But when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum, they are not altcoins. USDT is an altcoin that you can check it out. Ethereum or Bitcoin, like see, for example, right now, one ETH goes for almost $1.5 million, right? So, but it's still a fungible asset. So in base, to give you one main distinction, whenever anybody asks you what is the difference between a fungible and non-fungible asset, the first point that anyone has to say is, you know, NFT, which is called a non-fungible asset, is unique, which means it can only have one unique value for its entire lifetime. Okay, and when it comes to fungible assets, these are multiple assets, like they can be existent of the same coin in n number of quantity. Okay, when it comes to NFT, there can only be one quantity of that. Now there can also be another question that people will ask, okay, now if I create an NFT and I only have one value of it, then for the entire lifetime only one user will have it. That is the bright side of NFT. But there is also another concept of NFT fragmentation and another NFT class in ERC, that fungible, the standard is called 1155, where a single NFT will have multiple copies, n number of copies. So that is also available. It is possible, but it's on a different standard. But the first and main difference that anybody has to understand, that it is unique. It has only one value, while fungible asset can be of whatever quantity that you specify, n quantity, while here n is equal to 1. Understood? Cool. And yeah, so that's what it is. So we can use palette assets to create all of these things. We can have NFT as well as fungible assets, but today I'm going to just focus on how do we create our own custom token, right? I want my own chain to have, I want my chain to have my own cryptocurrency, and then I list it on a exchange. So then I create that coin, and then you guys can also start purchasing that coin, do crypto stuff and all that kind of things, right? So to begin with, so you see, I have already done the build. So a basic chain is will be running now. Like I can execute. The first and foremost thing is for me to import palette assets. So how do I import palette assets? So I want to copy the same version that I'm using. When it comes to Polkadot, always make sure that the chain version that you're using has to match with the frame palette version that you will be using in your palette. So if I'm going to call palette assets, I'm using a chain for me at Polkadot 9.28. When I'm using palette assets, I should make sure that it is coming from, I am calling it from the same version of the Polkadot chain. So for that, I'm just going to copy this palette balances, and let's create palettes and put it here, and assets is the name. And yeah, so I have imported this. So all of these you guys should know. Remember the step. The first point, I import the library here. The second thing, I mentioned the HTTP compilation target for my palette. So this is the second step. So I come to features. In my HTTP feature, I give the compilation target to what to use. And then in runtime benchmarks, if you are going to use all that, you're going to add it in runtime as well as try runtime. Right now, we are not focusing on benchmarks. So I'm not going to add it here. So right now, this is done. So now I need to implement all of this, palette assets to my runtime, right? So I have already told you how does one implement the code. So the first and foremost thing that I would do as a developer whenever I'm implementing any new palette is to go to my Substrate GitHub. Substrate GitHub is more easy, but also what you can do is you can go to your developers in substrate.dev, come here, go to Rust Docs. Rust Docs is going to be your your main and single and only source of truth for any of your projects that you will be doing. Understand? And here you come in, and first thing you start searching is palette assets. So once you get palette assets here, you're here, and now you see you have a detailed description of this. So I'm going to put this also in chat. And now how do I add a new palette? First and foremost thing is to implement the config for my custom palette that I'm importing. So I'll come here, look into the documentation and see what are the config members that I need to implement for my runtime. So you see there are about 14 associated items that I need to declare or instantiate for me to implement this palette assets here. So one of it is event. Event is common. We've already covered this. Balance in kitties, you guys should have known that balance, we just need to pass a member of balance which implements the currency trait. And then asset ID. Asset ID, they want something to be of type member, parameter, default. It has to implement all these traits. Whatever you're seeing here are all traits, right? It needs to implement all of these things. And currency. So for type currency, you want to say what is your, so it needs to implement a trait called reservable currency. So reservable currency from our palette balances already implements reservable currency. So I can pass palette balances here. Then you have force origin, ensure origin, and asset deposit. And yeah, you have a lot of things, right? So, and some of these things that you see, asset account deposit is a get of something that is used as a currency as of type balance, which means it's a constant type, right? All these things are something that you're setting at runtime. So all these get parameters are of type some constant that we can implement. And there's frozen balance. So this is regarding an account. If an account is frozen, or I mean like an account which has an asset ID which is frozen, right? So that is where this frozen concept comes into picture. And then extra whatever the things, and then you have wait info. And similarly, you can find that your assets will have something called as metadata. So not only, so somebody, Dhruv is saying your fungible assets have metadata, and while I mean NFT has metadata, while fungible doesn't have. So it's not really the case. Your any asset can have metadata. Even your fungible assets can have metadata depending on how you've designed your blockchain, right? So that is where this comes into place. And every time you're exceeding a default limit of metadata, because on the blockchain, storing data is an expensive operation and you're going to pay for it. So every time you exceed something, you pay per byte. So even in Dropbox, if you have seen, I have told you guys, if the data exceeds some basic thing, I'm going to ask the guy to pay more for it, right? Similarly, even in assets, we have a similar functionality. If the metadata exists, the base metadata, metadata deposit, base metadata, then for every byte of data that you're going to use in the metadata, you're going to pay, right? So that is what these are all the things that palette asset is. So the first step is to implement this. Now the question will come up like, how do I do all this? So implementing this thing is one tricky part. It's a tricky piece, but as you keep developing, you will find resources on how to do it. So but mainly as a developer, what I need to know is I need to pass a member, like a type for this balance, which implements all these traits. That's all I need to do. I need to pass a value that implements all these traits that this guy is mentioning here. So that is the first and foremost step. Like we need to figure out, even though it will be complex, you don't know, what to implement and all that. So you have to go search for things that you need that implements all these things. And how do you figure out that something is implemented all these things? Is again, you go to the instance, like so palette assets. So similarly, I open once copy this. Now I'm teaching you how do I search for things that implement things, right? Now, for example, here you have currency, which needs to implement reservable currency. Now, how do I know what variable will I pass here, which implements a reservable currency trait? So for that, I already know the answer, that palette balances implements all the currency traits, right? So I will come here again. Rust docs is your sole single source of truth that you will need to use at all times. So I come here, and then once I come to this piece of this one, you can see something called as implementations, right? So under implementations, what you see is it implements the currency trait, reservable currency, named reservable currency, lockable currency, and imbalance, right? So this is how a developer needs to figure out what are the traits that your function requires or implements. So this is not only for Substrate development, it is also for Rust developers. So even Rust developers, this is how they figure out, because most of the times you're going to deal with a lot of traits or things that require you to implement certain other traits. And how are you going to find that out? Your entire thing will always be the docs. how to learn the docs and how to search stuff, you developer in Rust automatically, right? So this is how you can see now I can pass palette balances variable to this type currency here, and because it already implements the reservable currency. So this is how you do it. So for now, for assets, I've already implemented it, and I've already done it. So I'm going to directly just copy paste the whole thing. But I've given you the solution of how one figures this thing out, right? So let me just look that up. And so yeah, I come here, and so how do you add a palette to your runtime? The first step is to implement the config. Second step is to implement the parameter types. Third step is to include it inside your construct runtime, right? So let's do that quickly. And yeah, so here you see I have implemented palette assets config, all the 14 things I'm going to do. And you see here for currency, I'm passing balances. And where does this balances come from? I'm calling balances from here, palette balances, which in turn implements the reservable currency rate. Similarly, some things that we need to figure out. So I am using asset ID and balance. So this balance I have already written at my code. Your node template already comes with such a thing called balance, where you have implemented balance already, right? So you can see here type balance is implemented. So similarly, I want to use the type asset ID. So let's implement asset ID. So yeah, I have implemented asset ID. Now let's go back to palette, right? So you see type asset ID is equal to asset ID, then balances force origin, I am keeping it as the root of, so origin who can call the force functions, right? So I'm keeping it as ensure root, and the account ID asset deposit. So you see an asset deposit, the minimum asset deposit to create a crypto coin, right? Not just crypto, but here since we are dealing with the fungible asset, to create an asset, I want a minimum deposit of this much value, right? This many units of tokens. And then you have, what else is there? Asset account deposit is again asset deposit, metadata deposit base. So for your base metadata, I'm going to charge you this much. But now after you exceed your base metadata limit, for every byte that you add, I'm going to charge this much, right? So these are all the things that I want to refer, and you can see I put it under parameter types, and these are all constants that I'm declaring at runtime. So once I do this, the second step is to, the third step basically is to implement this assets, palette assets. So you see now I've added here, and now all I need to do is cargo build. So this step is, I think, our second session where we had tried to do okay, you see the error. It's saying that ensure root is not found in the scope because I have not imported ensure root, and ensure root comes from your frame system ensure root. So again, I go to the beginning of my file, and then let's import that. Import. So yeah, once this is done, again a cargo build, there might be another error that might pop up. So the first thing, again, I want to mention another method. So your docs is the first and foremost thing that you need to refer. If not, because of version issues, what I tend to do is I always come to my Substrate GitHub. So I come to my Substrate GitHub link manually. I go there because your docs will always be on the latest version of docs that they've implemented. Sometimes, you see, it takes time for people to update docs, right? So maybe they might be a week late or so. So what I mostly do is I come to my Substrate GitHub, and the code is already the first thing that will be updated, right? So I come here and start looking for Polkadot. So, and I search for the version that I am using in my code. You see, there are a lot of Polkadot versions, and this is what is happening with all of you guys in Kitties. Kitties is using a very old Polkadot version, while right now they're on Polkadot 9.28, right? So I come to the version that I want, and then I come inside the frame folder. So inside the frame folder is where all your palettes that Substrate provide lives, right? So once I'm inside the frame folder, I have assets palette here. So I come to assets and make sure to go to cargo.toml and see that you can see all your palette assets, your version and everything is there. So I've imported this, right? This particular library, because this can change from version to version. The library will have different functions or different methods. There are some types that may not be even existing in the older version, but in the newer versions, they've added it, right? So I come here, I start looking at the code that they've written. So first and foremost, for any palette, the design is the same. You will have an event, storage, config, and call. So when I come here, I know I go to this config to see that, okay, now for the version that I'm using, I have event, balance, asset ID, currency, member. So all these 14 things that you saw here, right? All these 14 things, I'll make sure that it is over here. So this is the other method of developer trying to debug the code and try to figure out what you want to implement. And this method is what I prefer mostly, because I can stick to the version that I'm using, and the docs are always on the latest version that they are using. So there are times, like for example, the current code base I'm using is on Polkadot 9.19, and I can't rely on this docs because this docs is much updated, and 9.19 is pretty old, right? And yeah, and you can never, like, so trying to keep up with Polkadot's version updates is really hard, because almost every month they keep increasing the version, and you need to keep increasing your version as well. And yeah, that is a task on its own, which is why you would find a lot of code bases which are still using older Polkadot versions, right? So it's not their fault or anything. It's just that Polkadot is aggressively developing and updating your entire code base when you've written like a lot of code to a newer thing will take time. So yeah, these are the two main methods. So moving on, I think our build might have finished. So you can see I'm getting another error saying missing field assets in initializer of Genesis config. And you can see the path here, node source change spec.rs at line number 135. So I go to my node source folder at line number 135. Let me go to line number 135. So in 135, I have this Genesis config. It is saying is missing assets. So whenever you have assets, it has something called as a Genesis config. What is Genesis config? The word Genesis, as the term says, it is the first data that the blockchain has. So at Genesis, when the blockchain starts, what data does my asset have? You can mention whatever it is. For example, for at Genesis in palette balances, I am saying I have certain accounts. So ended accounts is just a list of accounts which have a balance of this much. So if you want to change the balance of your participants in like Alice and Bob, you can come and change this value here, and you should be able to change it. And this is like a homework exploration for all of you guys to play around with this number and see how the balance of an account changes when you start your chain, right? So here in assets, at the moment, I don't want to give any Genesis config. So I'm going to leave it to default. Cool. So yeah. So now that I've added that, so it's done. So I think now at least it should compile successfully. So you see, these are small missing bits that you will not know as a developer. As you keep working with the code, you'll find these all errors and you can start fixing it. The only thing you need to understand is what is Genesis config. That is what you need to know. So Genesis config is nothing but what is the configuration of my asset or my palette that that must have at the first block. So even in blockchain, you have terms called Genesis block. What is Genesis block? It's nothing but block number 1. That's it. So at block number 1, what is the data it has? Similarly, for block number 1, what does asset needs to carry? I'm not really worried about, so I implement the default. So default, what it'll do is whatever the default is. So remember Rust, when I said if you have a U32 or any integer type, the default of that is 0, right? So depending on all your primitive types, or for palette asset, they will have some storage which implements the default trait, right? We have also implemented the default trait in one of the examples, right? In one of the sessions. So it implements the default trait, and whenever you call the default of it, you will get the base value. You can even enter your custom default value that you want to. Like for example, for I8, the default is going to be 0, but I can implement the default trait to say that no, for I8, the default should be 10. right? In case you want the default to be 10, you can do that as well. We have already shown that. So yeah. So right now, as you can see, there are no more errors, and this is almost compiling. So now quickly, let's get our code ready for our custom palette. So I'll show this working. Now you can, a good question to ask right now is, I've imported assets, and assets is going to work here. Now, why do I need to write a palette? Because assets is just a palette that they are providing to us as a support for us to use or build fungible assets or NFT assets or whatever, right? So I'll just start this code and show you guys how asset is. So you can see the code is running here in 9944. Sorry, let's just give me a minute. So this error you guys will not face. This I'm facing because I'm using code spaces. So just ignore this.
Yeah, I see 2 instances of assets.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Wait, this is kind of your. It is running on localhost, but it's not connecting to localhost.
Can you try an incognito? Works for me.
Super weird.
Try clearing the cache, okay?
Okay. It is running on 9944, but for some reason it's not.
You gave the external flag, no?
Okay. Okay, okay, you guys shouldn't face this issue. This is just a code space thing.
Code specification.
Yeah, so it's just forward. So 9944 has been forwarded to this port. So you can see my block is running here. It's block number whatever. So 17. So yeah, it's working. 17 blocks have been done, right? So now how do I know if palette assets is here? I come here and look, I can find assets that I've implemented. So like I said, asset, you can create your own things. Like, so here, if I come, I create an asset. So you can say it says ID as, it wants an ID, it wants the owner of the thing. So I'll say Alice, and then minimum balance for the asset. So 10,000, right? I create this, it's sign and submit. So it's saying there's an invalid transaction, inability to pay some fees, account balance is too low. So because Ferdy here has zero balance, you can see it here, right? So I come to Bob, Bob has some balance, let me create it with Bob. And this should be fine. So yeah, you see, asset has been created and these are all the events. So now if I come to the block explorer, you can find that there's assets created here with ID1, Bob, and Bob is the creator of the asset and owner is Alice. And here a balance reserve, that 10,000 amount was moved from Bob's account into assets. When it was reserved into Bob's account, because this is the value that he set for his asset ID1. Now I want to also give my token a name, right? So even in assets, we have something called as set metadata. So I want to call the set metadata. I know my asset ID is 1 because that's what I've given. I want to call my token Batman and my symbol is bat and the token decimals. So what is decimals? Every token has a number of decimals that is specified. For example, the polka dot has decimals of 10 power 12. So similarly, here I want to specify how many decimal values can my fungible token have. So I want to specify it as 18. So I specify this and I sign and submit. And you see, this is also completed. So again, in the Explorer, you can see assets metadata set as Batman, bat, decimal is 18. Is it a frozen asset? No, it's not. So how do I check my change storage? Come to my change state, come to assets. Inside my assets, I can see asset as a storage. So if I not do this and just see, you can have, see, I have an asset ID 1. The owner here is Bob's address, and you have a supply of, I mean, a minimum balance of 10,000 here, right? I also want to see the metadata. So if I come here and give the metadata for my asset, so I have asset as ID 1 and the name, the symbol and decimal is here, Batman, right? So this is a base way of using palette assets, but I don't want to do this, right? I want to have a palette that I mean, a cryptocurrency that I want to create on my own, and I want to build my own functionalities on top of the palette assets that provide, because palette assets only provide me all these functions that you saw. It does not give you anything more than that. But what if you want to build an asset, you want to build your own logic, like for example, a bonding curve. What is a bonding curve? For every native token, like, so like how one Ethereum is 1.5 million US dollars. Similarly, that comes on a curve. It's called a bonding curve. Similarly, for my token, I want to implement a bonding curve, or you want to implement the concept of staking for my token. So if Batman token can be staked, so people can stake their Batman token, and once the stake has been completed, you can earn some rewards out of the stake or a liquidity pool. So these are all extra features that you can build, right? So now how do I do that? Palette asset, I cannot do that, right? I can only use palette assets to create a token or do whatever these things are. So that is what we are going to learn right now. So how do I build such a palette where I'm custom using the palette assets? So to begin with, you already know the first step whenever you're building a palette is come here and create a palette. So right now I'm just going to copy this entire template thing and put it inside my palettes folder. So now I have created, there are two palettes. One, there's a template copy, and I want to call this thing as, we'll call it as camp assets. Camp is just the bootcamp. And so I'm creating a new palette. So forget the template code. And so in my Carver terminal, I also want to change my name of the palette. So all these things will stay similar to your Dropbox. Whenever you're writing a Dropbox palette, you'll come name, change it. So come here, camp assets. So this is a palette for your fungible assets, and then you have everything else, and then you have the lib.rs. So first and foremost thing, always will create, once you're done creating the template for your palette, come to your runtime and import the palette and add it to it. So at palette thing, I have a local palette called camp palettes, camp assets. And so mention it here. Second step, you need to import the, mention the std feature. So camp assets, std is done. So now the third step is for you to come and implement the config for your camp assets, right? So how do we do that? We just directly go to the implement so block. So before that, let me just import my camp assets here, right? And then let's go to so here since it was the template code that I copied, even this implementation is going to be pretty simple because it's the same code. I have not done any custom feature there, right? Not yet. We are going to modify it. So once I do that, I mention it here. Camp assets is the name of my palette, so I mention it inside my custom runtime. So this is the base thing that you need to do, right? So once you are done with all this, just do cargo build to make sure that there are no errors for you adding a new palette or creating a new palette, right? So we don't want errors with that. So let's quickly do this. So it looks like this will build, so it's fine. So now what I want to teach you guys, the main thing is, how do I use another palette for my own palette, right? So now I want to use palette assets. So let me import palette assets, similarly how I did it in runtime, into my library. So this method of how I'm going to teach you is something called as tight coupling. So there are two ways of coding or using palettes in Substrate. Okay, so one way is the first way is called tight coupling. The second way is called loose coupling. Okay, so there are two ways of how you can use it. So today I will only teach you about tight coupling. Loose coupling is another concept where you use custom traits and stuff to implement your palette, and you can achieve both. So the real scenario of when you want to use tight coupling and when you want to use loose coupling. So when do I use tight coupling is whenever my palette that I'm writing is directly impacting a parent palette or directly dependent. So it's either impacting or it's dependent. Another parent palette which will modify its storages. So the storage of the parent palette will get modified because of you using this, right? That is where you want, like, any change made in the parent will impact your child, and any change made to your child will impact the parent palette. So that's when you want to use tight coupling. So loose coupling is you use when you don't have any direct relation, no direct relation, but you want some of the functions from the palette. So not all the functions, but just some of the things, right? That's when you use loose coupling, and loose coupling is proven to be more efficient, and you can achieve most of your things by just loose coupling. You don't really need to tight couple all the time. But yeah, these are two approaches, and there is a different use case when you want to do what, right? Jibril is asking, so we can have tokens from both parachains and a smart contract functionality. Yes. So see, you creating this contract. So in ERC20, what you're doing, you're creating your own fungible token, right? That is as a smart contract. Similarly, in Ink smart contract, there's another Polkadot standard for creating fungible tokens. But since this bootcamp is mainly comprised of substrate development, so as a substrate developer, you're building your own chain. You also want to have a custom token of your own. So how do you do that on a substrate chain? That is what I'm teaching you. Is that clear, Jibril? So on a smart contract, you have ink contracts that you can use to create another fungible standard, even similar to what ERC20 has. But yeah, but this is mostly to what we're doing. So hopefully you guys understand at least a little bit of what tight coupling, loose coupling is. So now moving on. So I want to teach you how we are going to use tight coupling, right? So the first and foremost step is, how do you know that palettes are tight coupled, right? The first thing is when you come to your palette config, you add the tightly coupling palette that you want to use. So here I'll use palette assets. So palette assets, the config. So I have also, I'm adding the palette assets config also to my custom palette, that is camp assets, right? And this is what I want to do. Just give me a minute. So yeah, so here I want to add palette assets to my config. So this way, what these two are tightly coupled now. So my camp assets is tightly coupled with palette assets, which means, why do I need to do this? So that I can call the methods. So in my previous thing, you had seen that in my Explorer, I had to call two different functions, one to create and one more to set metadata, right? To do a single functionality. Now, when I'm building my own palette, I don't want to keep two functionalities to be called to just do two things, because I need to pay transaction fees 2 times to do that, right? I don't want to do all that. So you want to optimize that. So I, in turn, my palette will call palette assets create and palette assets set metadata function. So to call that, you need to tightly couple it. If you don't do this, you will not be able to call that functionality. So which is where you want to tight couple it. You can also achieve the same functionality of calling a method from another palette using loose coupling as well. But here we are just focusing on tight coupling. So the first step is to come and add the tightly coupled config to your palette config. So once you're done with this, that's the first step is done. And right now we are not really worried about all these functions. So I'm just going to delete all this. So I'm not worried about these things as well. So let's delete all this. So yeah, the first method. So whenever you want to create a fungible token is like we want to create a token, right? So let's call this create token, and here now this is the function. So what are the things that I want to implement? I want to be able to create a token for my custom chain that I want to do, or users coming to my chain can also create their own fungible tokens. This is the sort of functionality we are building. So for that, what are the things that I would need? First thing you saw, we need a name of the token. So a name. So on blockchain, all of these things can never be implemented using a string, because there is no such thing as a string, because string is a data structure in Rust, right? And you can't implement that on blockchain. So in turn, what is string? The base thing is a vector of bytes, right? String is a vector of bytes. To do that, so I will use something called as vector of bytes. So now again, you don't have vector that is automatically imported for you. So I mean, the Substrate system does not give you that. So in turn, you need to implement. Import vector. And so how do you import vector? You can import it from your frame support. So in frame support, you have something called as inherent, and inside inherent you can see one, you can see what are the different things that my inherent is giving me, right? So here you can see I have something called as a vector. So I can import vector from here. Okay. So once I've imported vector, so for a name, I want the name of my token. Second, I want to have symbol of my token. So symbol is again a vector of U8. And then what else? Decimals. So decimals is just your total number of decimal values that your token will have. So that I can keep it up to U8. And then I want to also mention the initial supply. So initial supply is what is the supply of your tokens at the when it's launched. So your initial supply is again of type balance, right? So it is not of, it's not a number, it's of type balance. Now where is balance implemented for you? I have already shown you that balance is implemented in runtime lib.rs, where type is mentioned as U128 here, but I want to use this type because this balance implements a different number of traits. So how do I call anything from my runtime? You use the you take the generic and you call it from there. So T balance. So here I mentioned that my custom initial supply type is going to be balance. Now moving on. Now what I need to do, so this ensure signed is making sure that the owner is calling whoever is calling this function has signed his transaction, right? So and this foo, you can see that it's saying it is of type account ID. So you get an account ID when you when ensure signed origin is confirmed. When the origin is a origin of type origin for is like ensured that when is confirmed that he has signed his transaction, you get the account ID from this. So how to read about all that, you can see hover on this. When if you have Rust Analyzer extension, you can always go to the documentation directly, or you can go to Google and then go to your documentation like the way I showed it to you, right? So here it's easier for me to say it here. So you see, it's ensure signed is a function which takes these generic parameters and it takes the initial parameter of O, which is of type outer origin, and in turn it returns a result which can be an account ID, or it throws an error which is a bad origin. So which is why the question mark syntax is used. So the question mark syntax will remove the result or the error. So the question mark syntax, if it is successful, this function will give you the value as account ID, and if there's an error, it's going to throw an error of bad origin, right? Always while writing code, make sure to read what methods you're doing, and that's what. And you see here it says who, which is of type account ID. So I want to rename this as an owner, right? And now what I want to do is I need to want to maintain something called as an ID for my asset, right? So I have a storage here. So this I want to change it as asset ID. So I'll change this as asset ID. I want it to be of type asset ID. So again, type asset ID, I've implemented it in my runtime. So I will import it as type asset ID from my runtime. And second thing, by default, if I have explained it to you, it's of type option query. So option query will return some or none, but I don't want to deal with option query now for this count value, at least asset ID. So I want to use value query. See, automatically I'm getting the prompt and it's saying I have not imported this. I need to import this from so and so thing. So when I tab, it'll automatically import it here. So it is of type value query. So if you remember what value query is, the default. So whenever you query a storage on empty, it'll give you the default value of the type. So if asset ID is U32, the default value is going to be 0, right? And option query will return some 0, right? So, and if it is empty, it will return none. And while value query, if it is empty, it will return the default type that it has. And I want to rename this function as get asset ID. And yeah, so this is the first step that I want to do. So let's call the first step. So let the ID of my token is equal to self. How do I call my storage? It's called self. I use the self syntax, and then I can call the get asset. You see, once I call self, I have a list of functions that I can call, right? Use. So there are all these create token, the from, and here I also have the get asset ID. So I want to call get asset ID, which will return the ID value for my token that I'm going to create. Got it? So the next thing is so the first step that you want to do is we want to call palette assets. And from palette assets, you have to use something called as this one. So let this compile and you should be able to see what are the methods that my palette has. So you can have something called as palette, and then I use the turbofish syntax. Again, this is all Rust concepts. I have explained the turbofish syntax to you guys previously as well. So basically, I'm just saying this palette is of type T, so that I can pass the type T, which is all of the things that I've implemented for config for my palette asset as well when I'm calling it, right? And then I want to call the function that palette asset provides. So it's assets. So let me do this again. You guys can at least see what it provides. And then my type T. And then I want to call the create function first, right? So when I call create, so you have certain functions that I need to pass. So I'll anyway put it as a question mark. Now, how will I know what are the functions that I need to pass? Right. So for that, your first thing that you need to do is go to your develop pod. I want to show this process. And yeah, let's go here and not here. You have assets. So again, I come back to palette assets. So under your call enum, you have all your calls that you can call. So you have create, transfer, and all these things, right? So here now I want to make sure that I read my call enum. What are the things that my call enum has? It has create function, which takes an ID, admin, and minimum balance. And these are the types that I need to pass. So there are 3 things I need to pass first. Right. So apart from this, since I'm tightly coupling my palette, I also need to pass something called as an origin to my. So who is the guy calling it? So I want to pass the same origin to guy. So here I want to clone here. If I don't clone, you will get an error in Rust saying that origin is already used inside this function, but it's if I want to pass it as a variable here, it won't let you do that, right? So to do that, I am cloning there, but I will show the error again. And since I'm going to use origin again, I'm going to clone it here as well. This is a easy fix through that we can use.
So Lokesh, when I'm cloning,
yeah,
am I just passing the reference?
Not the reference. You will get a new object, a new copy of the thing. So clone implements the clone and the copy trait.
Okay.
So you will get a new thing. So yeah. And then we saw that the parameters we need to pass is the ID, admin, and the minimum balance. So admin is the account ID, and account ID has to be of type T config lookup as static lookup, the source, right? And minimum balance. So for that, I have not yet implemented the admin. So I'll leave that empty now. And minimum balance. Minimum balance, I'm taking the initial supply, which is the minimum balance. Initial supply here, right? So now I have passed all the things. ID, minimum balance, ID is missing. So ID, I just pass ID as it is. And since I might require ID to call the next function, I'm going to clone it, right? And what else? We need to implement the admin. So now let the token owner. So you saw the type that you need to pass, right? It says that the type that you need to pass is T config lookup as static lookup and it should basically be of type source from this. So to get around that, we have a function that we use which can be called from your SP runtime. So I call T lookup and then as an SP runtime. So SP runtime is implemented here and then traits. But you see, inside traits, you have the static. So you have the static lookup, right? Now inside static lookup, so I've reached this piece. So now I have a variable of static lookup. Now I need a variable that is of type source. So here I have inside my static lookup, I have a function which says you can look up or you can unlook up, right? And you have a source and target, all these different methods. So let me unlook up from my origin owner, which I have already created. So here owner is of type account ID, owner dot look. So I will compile this code and show you the error, but right now I'll just write it as it is and pass the token owner. So with this, at least to call my first function, I have passed all my variables. So one thing I want you guys to understand is, so SP runtime, even though we had it here, it's under dev dependency. I want to move this up to the dependencies because I'm explicitly calling SP runtime here, which is required by my palette, and it cannot be as a dev dependency because I'm using it compulsory in my palette. And if it's under dev dependencies and people are not importing it, it's not viable. I need to make sure that it's a dependency, otherwise it's not working. So let's compile this code.
So Lokesh, so when you pass owner to token owner, that means it's not taking account ID for the creation of the tokens, right? So you have to convert it to source.
Yeah, so this will convert it of type source. Yes.
Type source. Okay, so it's because the parrot assets is written in that way, correct?
Correct. Okay, and here, so firstly to begin with, I have not imported palette assets here. So let's just import palette assets in my camp assets. And here, while implementing, similarly, I need to implement the history feature. Right. And now if I come back, it should be fine. You can see this account ID, and you can see now this has been converted to type source, right? And similarly, now you should also be able to see it, but this will use it anyway. So let's compile this again. So it's saying asset ID not found. So it's saying T asset ID not found. So even though in my storage, I'm saying T asset ID not found. But so the error here is because I'm saying T is of my generic type, but I'm not passed what is the trait it implements. So it needs to implement the config trait. So config trait that we are implementing in our runtime, right? So all this T asset ID is coming from runtime, which is a configuration for my runtime. So that is the reason I'm specifying that it has to implement the config trait. Now this error should likely go away. And there's an error 262 on runtime. Okay, this is a typo. Okay, here call runtime 264. There are a lot of runtime errors. Call is not part.
Transaction payment config.
No, so that is because I'm missing a bracket somewhere. Or I think I missed something there.
No, this is coming from pallet transaction payment, right? It's not coming from pallet assets.
Not just assets, but transaction payment. Because of that, line 262, we had an error. I might have deleted or something. So let me just refer to the. Okay. event on charge operational fee multiplier weight to fee length to okay, yeah. So I have, so this is whatever I'm writing right now is from the node template. This is not there. I have not, somehow I have deleted these two fields, which is why it's complete. So always you can go back to your node template to and it should be fine. Okay, I have done some change that is to my runtime lib.rs. Let's go through all the changes we've done in runtime lib.rs.
Camp assets. Ensure root.
Sorry, ensure root. We added ensure root. Camp assets we've added. And here palette sudo. Palette sudo has gone missing. Damn. Okay. And I have also deleted event and call. Okay. Oh yeah.
That is inside palette sudo. And
yeah. Looks like I missed some lines here. That is why. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy paste directly from the old template that I have already Go back. I have missed, like maybe while writing the code I would have deleted something. Okay, I think yeah, all the errors are kind of gone. So right now, so my function, I have written something where I have fixed my ID, my token owner, and I am calling the create function from my palette assets in my custom palette that I've written. So this piece of code will work, but let it complete. So it's already gone to the bin. It's creating the binary, which means it's already compiled all the things. So let's just wait.
so location line number 75. Can you tell me what are you doing? So where is get asset ID coming from?
In line number 75.
Because I don't see the get asset ID function.
No, I have already written it here, right? I have told you that I changed my getter function for my storage asset ID as get asset ID. So this is where it comes from.
Okay, so it is a helper function for getting the asset ID, right?
It's the getter function to get the asset ID from this storage.
Got it.
Yeah. So you see, it's compiled successfully. Now I just want to duplicate the ID, the clone thing. Why, if I don't clone here, what is the error message that I'll get? Let's look at that. So you can see value borrowed here after move. In Rust, this is a common error that everybody will face. So whenever you want to change immutable value, you get this value. And if you have consumed the original first instance of the data, you will get this value, right? So in Substrate, what you can do is to avoid this error, make sure that you clone it. And what does the clone function do? It implements the copy in the clone thread. So as you guys already know, I have explained in my Rust session that the copy creates a new instance of the original variable, right? So this is how your error will look like if you don't clone. And yeah, to avoid that, we can fix the clone. So yeah, so now we have created a new asset. We have written the code to create a new asset. Now I also similarly want to set the metadata, right? Because I've taken all this data, I want to set it. So we can call this. So now here I import this and then let's do the set method. So you see, these are all the methods that in palette assets I can call. So see, I'm able to call all these functions because I have tightly coupled palette assets here. Then I always remember that I'm able to do all this because I've tightly coupled my palette with palette assets. So which is why I'm able to call all of the, access all of these functions that palette assets has. So here I'll look for my set metadata function. So now my set metadata function takes an origin, ID, name, symbol, and decimals, right? Which already I have kind of given. So origin, I've already passed origin and ID. ID I have here. Name I am passing directly from here. Then symbol is also symbol here. Decimals is decimal. So everything is here. So almost the whole thing is here. And so yeah, this is done. So now in a single function, you see, I have avoided previously I had to manually do two things, and now in a single function I'm doing both the things, right? And now let us create a event for our this one. Event. So let's say the token is created. So for the token that I created, I want to pass the name of the token and the owner of the token. Who's the rightful owner of that token, like the creation owner. So yeah. So with this, I'm done with my function, but I have not added this event token in my event palette, right? So let's do that. So here, let's change this. So token created, and so name is a vector U8. Name is a vector U8. It's a string basically, and my owner is of type account ID. Right, so from T account ID I'm writing it. So with this I have created the token event as well, and let's do cargo. So already it's saying there's an error here. It says value used here after move, the same error here. So where is it used? So you see in line number 87, name has already been consumed. It is the first time I'm using it after I've taken it, and it's already consumed here, and that's why I don't no longer have name to pass for my event. So you can overcome this easily by doing in Substrate. So yeah, with this, I think we are pretty much done. So the steps, I've created a owner, the ID, the token owner, I'm setting the metadata at one go, and I'm depositing an event. So this is a custom function that I've written, right? And you see now it's almost done. So yeah, so it looks like it's completed building, and I just want to fix my target template. So yeah, I've started my chain. Let's quickly go to the purchase. Okay, it's not working again because of my forwarded port. Now it's changed to this. Let's copy this. Again, you guys must not be facing this issue. So yeah, so you see my chain is running right now, and I have created my own palette, right? Camp assets. So Freddy has 0 balance, so I don't want to stick with Freddy, and I'll go with Alice. And now I have the function. The only function that I've created at the moment is a create token. So I want to give the same name, Batman, symbol as bat, decimals as 18, initial supply as 10,000. So in a single function, I'm setting all the metadata and also supplying my initial supply, and I'm creating my token. Right now, let's create the token. So you get it's in block, and all these things have been emitted. So we have also given a custom event, right? So you can see the palette name camp assets, and token created is the event. So inside token created, I have name, which is of string, which is a vector of bytes as Batman, and the owner is Alice. And then similarly, you have the metadata set for assets. And from assets palette, you have called metadata set, and from assets, you have also done a created event balance. This much amount was reserved from Alice. So these are all the events that happen. And similarly, now I go back to change state. And in your custom palette, when we are building fungible tokens, there are plenty of functions that we will build. That is where you will need your own storages and kind of things. So here, if I come back and see, so here you see the asset ID. I have not taken asset ID, but I've created the storage for asset ID, right? So, and I'm using it. You can see Batman has been created. So this is a base of, so basically this is a simple example of assets, like how you create your custom coin and things. Now you can build a lot of things on top of my palette. Now I can have, like I said, I can have staking, I can have vesting, I can have a liquidity pool for my token. You can build a bonding curve for your own token. You can have custom functionalities on your token. And most of the time, whenever you're building a fungible token, staking is a concept that is currently in the world that is used. So, and to implement those kind of functionalities like the staking or the liquidity pool, you will need to create your own palette. So, and how do you start off with? This is the method. So the main takeaway from this session is, so understanding what tight coupling is, how to import palette, how do you implement the config for runtime, how do you search the documentation, how do you figure out the stuff, and how do you start writing a normal function. So this is the main thing that I wanted to cover today. And yeah, that's pretty much. You guys who are, so all of this code I have already posted to GitHub, and you can find it here. So I'll share this link in the chat as well. So today's session, I have made it as workshop 2, and if you come to the feature as camp assets, you can see all of the code that I've written to find the running code for version 9.2 here. And that's basically now what we have completed is feature.
Okay, I think okay, now we'll have quiz session. So we have arranged like some questions. Some are easy, some are difficult. To keep things interesting, we have also added a buzzer. So okay, can
Yeah,
you
I am
that
creating
link?
the session. So yeah.
Okay. So so when you see the link, just register with your name, and if you know the answer, or if you want to attempt, just click on the buzzer and you can answer to your best knowledge. Cool.
Okay, probably let's do one round of the quiz, and maybe you guys are interested to join in the next round, right? So yeah, so all of you guys, so I'm going to reset the buzzer, and I'm locking the buzzers right now. So on your screen, all the buzzers will be locked. So we'll just do a small test round. So once we like say I have a question, now I say a question. The moment you know the answer, immediately you need to buzz, and the guy who buzzes first will be given the opportunity to like you can come and speak and give us the answer. Right? Let's do one small buzz round. So the question is screen and show you guys how the so I have Julian who's pressed first, and then Fahad, and then Harshit, and this is how it is. So I will call you guys, and I'll know who pressed first, and yeah. So this is how it'll be. So I'll keep resetting the buzzers. You can buzz, and yeah. So let's get started with the session. So I'm not going to share this entire screen, but yeah, this is how.
I think it would be nice, huh? Should we share? What do you think?
Sure. I have no issues, probably. Cool. So yeah, I'll reset the buzzer. The buzzer is on lock now. So any more guys who are wanting to join, kindly join. And Julian, yeah, probably yes.
And when you buzz, please unmute yourself, and you can speak the answer out loud. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. There is all over to you.
Cool. All right. So I'll start with Rust. So here is the first question. Be ready, guys. All right. So my question is Rust a statically typed or dynamically typed language?
Okay. We have only 3 people who has responded. So yeah. Ashwita, go ahead.
Yeah, it is statically typed language.
Statically typed. All right. And that is the correct answer.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right.
So for the rest of you guys, were you at least able to understand, like figure it out? And every time you guys are not sure with the answer, or you don't understand the answer to a question, please let us explain it to you. So the idea of this quiz is not for somebody to win it. Like, yeah, you do win it, but the idea is to share knowledge. You get it?
Okay. Lost buzzer. The buzzer is working, right, for you guys?
Cool. Father is not able to join. Okay, I'll just share the link again. And
it says the room doesn't exist for Julian.
Let me share it again. Okay. Can you guys check now? Okay. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, Lucas.
Okay, looks like
something like does not exist.
Yeah, there's a new link generated. I'm sharing the new link. Please join. Looks like this platform has some bugs, but yeah. And funny names are appreciated. Any names that you guys want to use works well with us.
I think let's make that mandatory.
Cool. You guys can try to rejoin with some custom names or very funny names that you want to use. So, if everybody is ready, we'll start off with the second question. We'll just keep going on, and people can keep joining us. Cool. Yeah.
All right.
Nice. Biggest loser, Harshit. Cool.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, we can continue.
All right. So second question is, what is cargo used for?
Okay, Turtle. Who's Turtle? You guys, Turtle can come up and say.
Yeah, it's for managing Rust project. So like installing and compiling and all.
Okay. Can you make it a little bit more defined?
Right.
Whatever you said is correct. And so in a simple term, cargo is a manager for Rust where you can handle the Rust version, the tool chains, and also install dependencies.
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Turtle.
All right.
Is it
Okay.
also called a package
So-
manager?
I'm sorry. So
Is it
it's not exactly a package manager, but it does handle packages.
okay, thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. So the third question is, name some common collection types in Rust.
Okay, we have only 2 entries.
All right.
I should go ahead.
So one is map, vector, collection types. That's all I'm getting. And list.
There is no list.
There is
Awesome.
no list. Okay. So hash maps, yes.
Vector and hash maps are what I'm remembering.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is vectors and there is string also. So
Sure.
strings are basically a collection of characters, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What about a
Yes, yes.
tuple?
Yes, tuple is also a
Tuple
collection.
is also there. It's not directly present in the standard library. I guess you have to import it or bring it in the prelude to use it. All right.
Cool.
Can you all tell me what are smart pointers?
Nobody is buzzing. Okay.
right.
Does it point to like a heap or a stack or something?
Yes, yes. So smart pointers are basically used for storing data on the heap. For example, you have primitive types such as U32 or I64, right? So they are automatically stored on the heap. But using smart pointers, you can store those data as well on the heap. All right. Now moving on to the next question. What
Guys,
is the
again, please
max-
stop us whenever you want us to reiterate the answer or something is not clear and we want to redo what we're doing, right? And
Oh, yeah,
Fazil,
sure, sure.
Fazil, you can just join and we have buzzers where you can buzz the moment you know the answer. Like once the question is done, I'll unlock the buzzer and you can buzz and whoever gets the first will try to answer it and in order and basically get the concept clear. Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Tej, yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay, so what is the match statement used for? So, Turtle.
Oh, yeah. I have to answer. I thought I would
Yeah.
come next. So I will get the point and I would not have to answer. Okay. So match we can use like switch case statement in other languages. So we can use here. So we can match to some type of sum or so when it unwraps to okay or error or some or none, or it can also match to I can match to any expression basically. If the value passed matches the expression, then the corresponding statement will be executed.
Okay. So basically match statements are used for pattern match, and the data type that you mostly use in match statements are enumerations. Mostly which is used. You can use other data types also.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Nice.
All right. Now
I think the connection to the room has changed again. I have lost connection to the room. I'll share the new link.
Sorry guys, I have been kicked out again.
No, yeah, that's because I myself got disconnected.
Oh.
Yeah. Please do enter some funny names. Let's see who's very creative and coming up with very funny names.
That will also add to the point.
Okay, it's funny that nobody has started. Guys, are you guys there or thinking of a funny name?
No, what's the new code? That code.
I have sent it in the chat.
It's a 9555066.
Yeah, it's 9. Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. It is 255.
No. Oh,
258077. Okay, who's the spoof exploit? Spoof exploit. Gavin.
okay, Gavin would have joined.
There's Akshat. Fazil is Fazil. What's up, polka dot? And with the dick, polka dot. Wait, what? Nice.
All right. Can I start?
Yeah, please start.
All right. Now let's move on to Substrate. So simple. What is Substrate, guys? All right. Fuzzy.
Substrate is a framework to develop blockchain.
No explanation needed there, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. There's
All
MST fan. There's NK. I don't know who NK is. Not known. NK is not known. Yeah. We don't know.
Okay.
Okay, NK was trying to answer.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think NK, so yeah, you're appreciated to come and talk to us. You can tell us answer directly. Okay, there's no response. Probably, yeah, we can proceed. This.
All right. Earth to NK. Can you hear?
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. We can go to the next question, I guess.
All right. Can you all tell us what is runtime in Substrate? All right.
Okay, that's started. Kyle.
Yeah. A runtime is sort of is where the, I say, palettes come into play to bring about the functionality of the blockchain or the specific parachain. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sort of. Yeah. So I'll just make it more clear, probably. So runtime is an enum where it holds all the palettes that you have declared for your blockchain. So yeah, that is what Jibril also said. So I just put it in a line. So yeah. So Jibril seems to be a DBC fan. So he's Kayo. Cool. Yeah. Let's move this on.
All right. Can you all tell what are transaction weights used for?
Can you repeat the question about?
Okay, sure, I'll repeat. Can you all tell us what are transaction weights used for?
Seems the button is not working.
Okay. But James is here. Yeah, please come ahead on audio and you can speak to us. I can see MST fan typing something here, so I think it's working for them. Required for database entry. Atomicity of operations. Okay, for controlling atomicity of operations, like gas. So yeah, I think James has given us the correct answer. So it's like gas, but we don't call it gas here. We call it transaction fees, right? Gas is relevant native to Ethereum, and which in other terms is called transaction fees. So yeah.
Right. So on Ethereum you have gas fees. Here it's transaction So basically it constitutes to your transaction fees. So weight consists of not just the fees, but also the memory that it uses for making the transaction. So you have an upper limit that you set on your extrinsic, which is, let's say, 10,000 or 1 lakh maybe, and that calculates your transaction fees. And every extrinsic has a transaction weight.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, complexity of code also matters. So if your function is going to run for a longer time, then you're going to end up paying longer fees. So yeah. So yeah, we can continue.
All right.
MST fan. Nice. So yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Can you tell me what do you mean by sharding in Substrate?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So sharding.
Yeah, I think Kaio has pressed first, so let Kaio go and then Turtle can go.
Okay. Yeah, sharding is basically would I say trying to like breaking execution into different layers, different layers to handle the execution or probably transaction execution or something like that. I don't know if I'm able to get my point across very well. We're just basically trying to push the computation like for execution to another layer. So yeah.
Okay.
Turtle, what's your answer?
Sharding is some sort of threading that I understand, and maybe it is like we delegate the computation and storage and all part of the functionality to different you can say different systems, where threading we do on the same system.
Okay. But not quite exactly.
So
Nicholas also has Nicholas is saying splitting operations in order to be executed on a different computation. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, Nicholas is almost close to the correct answer. Yeah. So are everybody clear of what sharding is, or this you want to re-explain, like give the answer?
Sure. So sharding. So basically, all of the chains are sharded chains. Sharded means separate, basically. So that's one of the main advantages that Substrate has. So when you say sharding, it automatically becomes a separate chain, which is interoperable with the other chains, which are also sharded. So that's why you have the concept of relay chains and parachains. So all the parachains that you see are sharded chains. So that's how you can get your separate functionality, also an interoperable functionality when you choose a chain which is sharded. Is that fine? Or
all clear, guys? If Tej's explanation is clear, please all of you buzz. There's too many names.
Okay, it's not clear, so nobody has buzzed.
Yeah, nobody's buzzing. Probably we've lost.
But it's not working. I was buzzing.
All right.
Okay, maybe we lost connection to it again.
Good.
But yeah.
But okay, if I think without even buzzing, you all can answer, no issues. If you want to. Okay.
Looks like the platform is disconnecting to me.
Fine, no issues. Can you all tell us what does SR25519, ED25519, and ECDSA specify?
Yeah, you can just come on.
Can you come again?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you all tell us what does SR25519, ED25519, and ECDSA specify?
I think those are basically curves, right? I'm supposed to be cryptographic curves. I'm not. Edward, I think Edward and elliptic curve. I'm not sure.
Yes. And the third one is snorkel.
So it is kind of cryptographic algorithm where it is asymmetric cryptographic algorithm where it provides public and private key pair, and I hope
Yep.
both are different. SR and ED and EDC all are three different types of this asymmetric cryptographic algorithms.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
But one more thing. Yeah, is someone speaking?
No, I'm done.
All right. So one more thing I would like to add is that ED 25519 and SR 25519 are compatible with each other. Since they are different, they will produce different key value private and public keys, but they are compatible with each other.
Yeah, but I have one follow-up question. Can I ask?
Sure.
So it is a private key, like 10 word or 12 word mnemonics.
Okay, so the mnemonic, I think it goes up to 24 words. Through that mnemonic phrase, you create these public and private keys. So when you pass it to the algorithm, you get public and private keys as your. So one is secret and one is open to the network, which is a public.
I think that's basically BIP 39 and BIP 44, right?
Yes, BIP 39. Yes, correct.
Okay.
So BIP 39, BIP 34, 44. So Jibril, I mean, it's nice that you brought up the standard name. So BIP is the protocol that is used for creating these different encryption means or methods, right? And so the 34, the 39 and 44 are all protocol numbers that you can use. 39 is mostly compatible with Ethereum, Binance, your Polkadot. Most of the chains use these. 44 is for a multi-address seed phrase. So if you want to have like a multi-address functionality, then 39 also has multi-address, but 44 is uniquely addressing for a multi-address functionality. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. You can, so guys who are more interested in it, you can just GitHub, just search for GitHub BIP. Right. So once you search for it, you can find this thing called as Bitcoin improvement protocols. So here under this, you can look at like so many numbers, right? So 39 is what is widely used and 44 is again what Jibril had mentioned. And you can see the protocol, you can read it, what it is and everything here. So you see, these are all the words that will be used. Mostly your seed phrase, what gets what's given to you will be comprised of these words mostly. So yeah,
combination of these words.
Yes, cool. We can proceed.
All right, so the next question is, what is the functionality of
protocol this provides? And finality, I don't understand totally, but it seems like the finalized blocks are really finalized. I mean, yeah. So blocks are finalized based upon the votes, like Aura protocol, and then it is finally finalized by Grandpa.
Exactly. Correct. So Aura is the finality initiator, and Grandpa is the finality generator. So like Grandpa has the final say to anything. So Aura is like your grandchild. Aura will initiate that I want the chocolate. Grandpa will be like, no, I'm not going to buy you the chocolate. Or yes, I'll buy you the chocolate.
Yeah, I think it's Aura and Bib, right? I think Aura is for where the validators are sort of one after the other, where Bib is random. The
exactly.
The validators are random.
Yeah, so there is Aura and Babe and Grandpa. These are the three consensus palettes that Polkadot use. And Babe is not a funny name that they've just given. Babe has a very elaborate name.
Blind, I think it's blind something for block something. I can't remember the meaning.
Yeah, but yeah. So blind assignment for blockchain extension. So Yeah. So even Grandpa has it.
Yeah.
So Grandpa is not like just Grandpa. There is it's ghost-based recursive ancestor deriving prefix agreement. So yeah, but it's funny names like Aura, Grandpa, Baby. Just at least adds to the curiosity.
So this is new introduction in the Substrate. Like once consensus algorithm is already there, then what is the use of finality algorithm? So how it is
No.
justified?
So consensus is managed by these three palettes. So Aura, Babe, and Grandpa are the ones who manage the consensus. So Aura is the one that who initiates the block into the pool, and then Grandpa is the one who finalizes the block.
Okay.
It's the
I
consensus
think
mechanism.
I think the
And
reason
Babe
why
has the same functionality. Yeah.
I think the reason why basically they separated block finalization and block creation was to basically I think based on the way I think Bitcoin is I think probabilistic finality, and while for Polkadot they try to make it deterministic. That's consensus should be deterministic basically.
True.
No? Is it consensus?
Yes.
Yeah.
True. That's kind of it. Yeah, but so Grandpa deals with mostly like the NPOS consensus. So Polkadot works on nominated proof of stake. So the finality is decided by the total nominators that are also part of the chain. So yeah, that is what is the additional functionality that Polkadot has. So yeah. And James has a question. Nix is also used as a package manager. It's something that you don't need to really worry about. Nobody has to pick up on Nix or anything. So Cargo is the package manager for, you can like the manager for Rust. All you need to mainly learn is Cargo for learning Substrate and Rust. Yarn, Docker are all. So Docker is a separate deployment DevOps thing. So it's not necessary at the moment, but it's good to know. But it can be later in your learning. Yarn is again a package manager for JavaScript. So yeah. Sure. I think we can continue, right?
Sure. Now I'll move on to some common blockchain questions. All right. Okay. So can you all tell me the different types of blockchains?
I will ask for like, is it based on layer 1, layer 0, layer 2, or
No. Just in general.
Okay. In general, I think we have two. We have maybe permission and permissionless blockchains.
Yes. Can you give me examples of permissionless and permission?
Okay, permissionless would be basically Ethereum, Bitcoin, Polkadot types. Then permission will be probably private networks. I don't know any off the top of my head. So yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, Hyperledger Fabric, I think. Yeah.
That's private.
Yes. Hyperledger is for private. Your Polkadot, Ethereum, Bitcoin are all permissionless blockchains.
Yes.
And Jibril, also since you brought up layer 1 and all layer solutions, can you explain them? Like give all of them an explanation of what they are?
I'll try my best. I think layer 1 basically, I think layer one handles both the layer 1 handles, I think, the networking and the everything the block creation, block finalization, while I think layer 2s are on top of layer 1s and they just maybe perform a specific aspect. To be honest, I can't really explain it very well. So I think maybe I would even explain, because I was also looking into it, like trying to understand the like difference, especially even with Polkadot and Cosmos saying they are layer 0s. I was like, okay, so now what is the distinguishing factor in between? I know distinguishes them from each other. So I think
so probably I'll just put one-liners for everything. So layer 0 is your base chain, which has the chain architecture, the blockchain architecture, where you deal with your P2P networks, your consensus, and solving your governance and all that things to block. I think your databases that are using for chain, and entire architecture, right? So those are layer 0 solutions where you're providing an architecture for the blockchain to run. Layer 1 solutions like Polkadot, Ethereum, and all that have a consensus and a governance that they're implemented for your entire blockchain to function. Okay, and layer 2 are things that you are at like smart contract level, where you're not worried about what chain. It's just a small DApp. So all your DApps are all like layer 2 solutions, and all your DAOs, like decentralized autonomous organizations, are all can be at layer 1 depending on what they are trying to provide, because they'll have multiple solutions for multiple problems, right? So those are like one layer. One word liners for all that. So what about Polygon? Polygon network is again a chain. So it's around layer 1. Polygon is a layer 1 solution which provides you functionality for different things.
Sorry to say, but is it Polygon in layer 2? Since it's sort of classified under side chains, I think.
Yeah, so the thing is, Polygon also provides you your custom chain that you can build. But since Polygon is parenting with is basically a side chain to Ethereum, it's also considered it's mainly considered as a layer 2, but yeah. But you understand why it is a layer 2, because it's a side chain to your Ethereum chain. So yeah.
What is, side chain versus layer 2? How can we say?
So Polygon is just another fork of Ethereum that is running with a different governance model and stuff, and it is only there to solve certain problems or use cases. That is like a solution provider.
Yeah, I think another way to also even think about it is basically a way to a scaling solution. These layers on top of layer 1s are like a scaling solution to reduce the work of the layer 1 being Ethereum in this case and Polygon. So Polygon will act as a sort of like the layers act as a way to scale a blockchain to basically make it scale in functionality.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's there.
Can
and Fahad, please go.
Okay, can I say like Polygon has all the features of the blockchain, and just they are writing the checksum to.
So, but all the features of blockchain that Polygon has is basically from Ethereum. So, yeah.
No, what is it using for? Where Polygon using Ethereum?
Polygon is a side chain. Yes. So all the main blockchain and everything comes from Ethereum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Fahad is asking us, can Polkadot parachain talk to Ethereum inter-blockchain communication or a bridge? Inter-blockchain communication can happen, which is one of the greatest selling features of Polkadot. And how is it done is via a bridge called the XCM protocol. XCM is cross-chain messaging. So you can implement by using the XCM protocol. You can use Pallet XCM, which is there. Again, you can search it in your developers here. And XCM. Okay, looks like you're not able to get it. But that's fine. So there's a protocol called so you see there's a cross-chain consensus format which is called XCM that you can use, guys.
XCM is the format. I think XCMP is what will be the parachain to parachain.
Yeah.
XCMP. Yeah. No, somebody asked in the chat. Yeah. While I think there's HRMP. That's from
correct.
Horizontal relay message.
Yeah.
I forgot. I think that one is like okay.
But you can definitely read about it here. So there is a protocol called XCM, okay, it's a format, not a protocol, where you can try to talk to different chains or different parachains as well. And ideally, whenever you want to talk to another blockchain, you will need to implement some sort of bridge. So in the bridge, you will need to form some sort of ground-based agreement. My chain also has these minimum configurations, making it possible for me to communicate with two different things, and that's how it is. So yeah. And James, there is something called as Parity EVM, and EVM is Ethereum's virtual machine. So Parity EVM lets you basically understand pallet code. I mean EVM solidity code contracts. But yeah, you can. This works in again. You can combine it with XCM palette and try to use all these things. But yeah, ideally you'll have to build a bridge, and Polkadot has already built a bridge for us that we can try to use. You have to just import that into your code and start using it. So that's how it is. But yeah, there is a tutorial for that. Right now I'm not able to find it, but it'll change. So yeah, once you come here, you can find. So there is okay. This is under construction. Okay, but maybe once this is ready, you will be able to find it. But on maybe under interoperable, I have seen it. There is a tutorial on how to use the XCM palette. So you can see it exists with cross-chain. So interoperable. So you see, it learns. I mean, it's the compatibility is based on your cross-chain XCMP format. And shares it. There is also a small tutorial on how you can. I'll just post this link in chat as well. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think we can keep proceeding. This.
All right. So some questions remaining. Can you all tell me what is a 51% attack?
Yeah, 51% attack is when I try to build a separate chain, and my chain is really growing longer than the real one. And and this is only possible if I have at least 51% of the computation power compared to all other involved.
So when a single entity or organization owns the 51% of computation power and they can manipulate and own the chain basically, practically, I mean.
Yeah, they can grow their own chain, certainly taking some advantages. And because this will look like the longer chain, so this will be accepted and this will be valid, and they will get the advantages they wanted.
Okay. All right. So in a 51% attack, basically, one organization takes control of the entire chain. So your chain is compromised, right? So all the transactions that are being signed, everything is controlled by that specific organization or a group of people that constitute that organization. Or it depends on the number of people also. Correct. Your chain your attack depends on the number of people that are part of your or that are as participants to your chain.
So we can say if 51% of all the node owners come together, then they can manipulate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, you can manipulate. You can remove your blocks from your blockchain as well. So that is also a functionality that you can do if you have control over the blockchain. So all the transactions that are there, you can manipulate if you have control over the blockchain. Basically, your chain is compromised, right? When you are 51% owner in that particular chain, correct?
Yeah. So if I may also ask, is this in relation to what we call fault tolerance, Byzantine fault tolerance? Is it this 51% attack? Is it related to it?
Byzantine, I couldn't hear you.
I said the 51% attack. Is it related to fault tolerance? When they talk about blockchain being fault tolerant, is there any relation to it?
No. There's no relation to that. I think are you talking about a consensus mechanism?
Yes, I think because the 51% attack is related to consensus too, right?
Right. So when you have control of the chain, automatically consensus is also affected, right? So consensus is based on those 51% of the people that are as or are as participants of your chain, correct? So consensus automatically gets affected.
Okay.
Yeah, really, this 51% attack I had read in terms of Bitcoin chain, but does it really apply same way in proof of stake chain, where it is saying like 2/3 of the voting is required to finalize? Then is it really 50% or it is 75? I mean, 2/3 is 61%, like that.
No, so 51% is basically applied across all chains. It's common to every blockchain that you the main way that we can bypass the 51% attack is to make our blockchain bigger. So the bigger the blockchain, the safer it gets.
Yeah, more decentralized it is, and it is harder to come together to
Exactly.
compromise 51%.
Exactly. So that's the logic behind not having these kind of anomalies. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. So mostly it's not like attacking nodes. You can say that attacking nodes. It's mostly getting control of the chain. So yeah, indirectly the nodes will also be affected. So for example, if I'm making a transaction, then that transaction also might get affected, or also might get changed during the process. So you can say in a way attacking nodes. Is there anything you'll want to add, guys? Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So last question. Can you all tell me what are the consensus mechanisms, proof of work, or how do the consensus mechanisms, proof of work and proof of stake work?
Okay.
Yeah.
Proof of work is basically using trying to the computation is the let me calm down. I think proof of work is basically a consensus mechanism where where the proof that a certain work has been done is based on sort of maybe trying to solve a complex equation, while in proof of stake consensus is basically is done when someone has the like a stake of the network's tokens, basically.
Right. So in proof of work, you solve some kind of mathematical calculation to mine the block, correct? So that is your proof of work. And proof of stake is basically you select a random validator which validates your who stakes some coins for validating that piece of block or that piece of transaction. That is proof of work and proof of stake. And also a follow-up question to that, can you all tell me which one is more energy, or which one consumes more energy? Which consensus mechanism?
Proof of work.
Yeah, proof of work consumes more energy. Proof of work, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Probably we can extend this this question to also all of you guys just come out with all the consensus mechanisms that you will know. Like any consensus mechanism that you know, just give a one-liner about it.
Proof of
Apart from
history.
POWPOS are the most common ones, but there are many newer ones that are coming up and really catching up. So yeah.
Proof of history. I think there's proof of space here. I think chair blockchain. There's proof of space. Those are the only two I know.
Okay. Proof of history is correct. Solana uses something called proof of history. Yeah. And basically it's based on a timestamp. So making sure that this already existed. So yeah. Anything else, guys? So for anybody who's doing interest in Polygon, right now Polygon is also coming up with a very standard production-based consensus called ZK rollups. ZK is nothing but zero knowledge proofs. So zero knowledge proofs works in an order where one does not really need to know if that existed or not. Uh, for it to be valid. So once a thing is there, you just assume that yeah, it's done. But somewhat on those lines. But I'm not the right person to give you the correct explanation for that. But it's something that you guys can explore and something you should know because zero knowledge proofs are coming up and Polygon is adapting to it full time. So and it's based it's a sidechain really. So
Okay,
cool.
thank you. I have one question related to this, not directly. Like, suppose there are 4 nodes in a chain, and on each node there are 2 requests. I mean, users can connect through RP request at the same time on 4 nodes. Then how the queuing works? So which transaction goes first? The queuing happens at the all blockchain level, or individual nodes decide which one to do. I mean,
So
how
if it's a block generation, it'll work based off consensus model. So whatever consensus model they've implemented, it worked on that. But since you're talking in terms of just calls or API calls or RPC calls, there will be a queuing mechanism where if the block is already generated, depending on the P2P network and the logic that is, it's again like, so I can't give you the correct answer because it is dependent on the chain. But a rough answer would be like there will be an algorithm implemented to manage the queue, right? So it can either be first come first out, or it can be depending on the blockchain available, and it'll be there'll be a load balancer that manages all of these API requests. And if it's a single node running, what will happen is if that current block is implemented and somebody is already talking to that block, which means it's busy, then you will have to wait until that communication is over to get the newer communication. So these are, I mean, it's not the correct answer to your question, but it depends on the logic that they have implemented.
Yeah, but
But there will be a queue implemented for all that.
queue is common among all the nodes, or is it maintained individually by the nodes? I mean, what happens in case of Ethereum or any of our particular Polkadot chain?
I'm not very sure of answering this. I do know a little bit of it, but I don't want to say much because I'm not very confident of them. So yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, there's, I think we can move on. Huh?
Yes, I think we can conclude the quiz today. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, it's done. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much again, Tejas. Thank you so much again, Lokesh. That was awesome. I'm sure people will be going out there and creating cryptocurrencies now. And yeah, that quiz was great as well. People, if you have feedback on how you like that quiz, how you like the session, please leave it in the chat. And I will also leave a link for the next Q&A session. So anybody who would like to join that, please register on Luma. Otherwise, thank you again for joining. Thank you all for taking your time on Saturday. Thanks again, Tejas. Thanks again, Lokesh. All right, we'll see you again next Saturday or Friday if you see.
Thank you all.
See you
Thank you all for
quiz.
attending.
Probably one thing that we'd like to know is, do you want to have another Q&A session in the next session, or is there anything that you guys want us to cover? So we have one more session that where me and Tejas will be taking, and apart from that, you have external tutors as well. So in the next session, we'd like to hear some feedback on what you guys want to know on, and you want to have more Q&A like this. So
yeah,
probably
that will be better. You know? Either we ask or you ask. Anyway, it is going to enrich our knowledge. So
cool.
And
so
secondly,
yeah.
where can we practice it? Should we participate among the participants, like to establish their local nodes and then we will learn, or is there a place where we can build our node and connect for the learning purpose?
So whenever you're doing local development, you can do it on your own system, or you can connect to a test network on any of the test network, like Western network that Polkadot provides, and you can try to initiate your app. But at initial learning how to develop the contracts, you can do it at local development. And in terms of improving your skills, you can guys form teams. There are a lot of hackathons, especially Polkadot hackathons, that's going to happen in the next few months. In November, there is a Polkadot hackathon. And apart from that, even we at Polkadot India are probably going to organize a hackathon. So it'll be good to team up with guys and join hackathons. So until we are ready to host it, you guys can look out at DevFolio and DevPost. These are two websites where very actively blockchain hackathons are happening. And I believe that is one of the fastest way for anybody to pick up on blockchain. You will get really skilled because you'll only be given probably a week or something to do the entire project. And it's mostly simple. And yeah.
Do they guide
you
also,
guys should
or
go.
they just arrange the hackathon? I mean, the competition.
I'm sorry?
Do they guide also how to proceed, or do they
It
just
depends
check?
on which it depends on which hackathon you're joining. For example, me and Tejas have not just me, we both, the entire team here we have participated in multiple hackathons, and we have also won grants for that. And so those kind of so one but where the Polkadot has a hackathon every year officially. So there you have tutors who will also teach you on what it does. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And so this year in November, there is a hackathon by Polkadot. So you guys can prepare for that as well. So yeah. Apart from that, in the next few months, there are plenty of hackathons. There's plenty by Chainlink and
So do you think,
plenty of hackathons coming.
okay, so building a private permission network, will that be a good idea for a hackathon?
So that is like completely dependent on what you research and what you really want to build, and given the time, what you can build. So yeah, so first thing, if you want to build something in hackathon, idea is important, but also your understanding of the code and how fast you can build stuff is also equally important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe this is very common and might be done already.
I'm not sure. See, you see, hackathons, there are all sorts of ideas. It's all up to how you showcase your idea. To be honest, that is what a hackathon is.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
All right. I guess we can call it that. So we have a Q&A planned for the 9th. I think they want a Q&A next weekend also. We'll share a Luma link on that on very soon, and then we can take it over from there. All right. Thanks, people. Thanks again for joining in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.